Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today's video, I'm going to be explaining everything that I was able to figure out about getting stacks with Eula's elemental burst, and also just some of the mechanics behind it. I'm going to be looking at what the max amount of stacks we can get with her elemental burst at C0, or at least the best that I could find. I am in no way saying that the combos that I'm going to be showing you in today's video is going to be 100% the best way, but I think I did a pretty good job here. I think I did find some of the better combos you can do in order to get the most stacks, depending on the situation. And so before we do a deep dive into how many stacks that we can get, we should first understand the mechanics of her elemental burst. Some of them are really obvious, some of them not so much, but I guess some people are pretty adverse to reading the description of her skill, so I'm gonna go over it anyway. The first thing is that you cannot gain stacks from hitting opponents with other characters' abilities or skills. For example, Fischl's Oz or Xingqiu Rain Swords. You cannot gain stacks with Eula's charged attacks. You cannot gain stacks with weapon passive abilities like the Crush from the Prototype Archaic, Icicle from the Snow Tome Star Silver, or the Vacuum Blades from the Skyward Pride. There is a 30 stack limit on her elemental burst, but at C0, you are never going to hit that limit. Even at C6, hitting 30 is going to be pretty difficult still. There must be a 0.1 second gap in between each hit in order to get a stack. This restriction prevents us from gaining more than one stack by hitting multiple enemies. Other than that, 0.1 seconds is equal to 100 milliseconds, or it's also equivalent to 6 frames. So that means in between every single damage instance that you deal with Eula while you're trying to gain stacks, there needs to be a 6 frame gap between each of those. And I bring this up because the only situation where this is important is when you use the hold version of your E skill when you have 2 stacks of Grimheart. We'll talk about this later on in the video. And lastly, the only way to get stacks is from hitting your normal attacks and your E skill hits. But this also includes the Ice Whirl damage and the Ascension 1 passive skill, the Roiling Rhyme. And then one final note about attack speed. I think that most free-to-play or low-spending players don't have much access to extra attack speed unless you manage to pull yourself a Song of Broken Wallets, but I don't have that weapon, so I can't exactly test this myself. But from what I've seen and from what I've researched, the attack speed from an R1 Broken Pines does not help that much in getting more stacks. So for the most part, the combos are still going to stay the same, even if you have the attack speed. So now let's move on and find out what the best combo is going to be in order to get the most amount of stacks. In order to figure this out, we need to revisit that 0.1 second restriction to her elemental burst that I talked about earlier. And so when you use Eula's hold E skill while the Lightfall Sword is active, you should be getting 4 stacks off of it. However, when we weave this into the middle of our combo, we don't get the full 4 stacks. This is because the Ascension 1 passive skill and the following auto attack after the E skill overlap each other and basically merge together to just become 1 stack. You can think of it as not getting the stack from the passive skill or the following auto attack. It doesn't really matter. The important thing to know is that mashing your auto attack after the hold E skill is going to cause the Ascension 1 passive and your auto attack to occur within 6 frames of each other. I honestly think it's a very easy quality of life fix on miHoYo's part, unless of course they decide to do that intentionally. All they need to do is speed up the Ascension 1 passive skill so that it hits a bit earlier, but not too early so that it doesn't clash within 6 frames of the Ice Roll damage. So as long as those 3 hits don't occur within 6 frames of each other, we should be able to get all of our stacks. Now we could also delay the startup on Eula's attack by a couple of frames, but that would mean her attacks are a little bit slower, so that's a no from me. Regardless of all this though, we can get around it. All you have to do is wait a little bit before starting your auto attacks. Technically, you only need to wait 6 frames from when she can begin attacking again after the hold E skill, but that's pretty difficult to time. So a good tip to time this is to just hold a direction, and as soon as you see Eula take a step, you should be good to start hitting your auto attacks. So this mechanic is one of the most important things to know in order to get the max amount of stacks. The other one is that her E skill acts as kind of a chain to connect auto attack combos together so that they flow seamlessly without any kind of gaps. So if you utilize those 2 things, you should be able to get a good amount of stacks. And the max amount of stacks that you can get is 13. At least that was the best that I could do. And here is a list of all of the combos that I tried in order to get the most amount of stacks, and it's quite the long list. However, we can break this down and sort it so that it's a little bit easier to look at, and we would sort the combos by starting with 0 stacks. That means you enter your burst animation after using the hold E skill skill, and then having only 1 stack after using your burst. And then the other set of combos is starting with 1 stack, and then coming out with 2 stacks of Grimheart after using the elemental burst. And then within those 2 sections, you can break down the combos with starting with her E skill or starting with her normal attacks. So from my testing, if you start with 0 stacks, you're going to be unable to get past 11 stacks. It doesn't matter whether you start with your normal attack combos or if you start with her E skill, no matter what combination of attacks that you do, you can't hit more than 11. The only benefit that you would get by starting with 0 stacks is that you are entering your combo rotation with the resistance shred. So you get a slight boost to a couple of the normal attacks and the press version of your E skill before you ultimately hit the final hold version of your E skill at the end of the combo. So right, sometimes you can't always control how many stacks you have coming into your elemental burst. So if you do find yourself coming in with 0 stacks, you don't really have to worry about the combo that you're doing because most combos give you 11 stacks. So let's take a closer look at some of these combos so that you can understand why you can't exactly hit anything above 11. We'll take a look at her 2 normal attacks, press, 4 normal attacks into hold E skill combo, and it looks like we might be able to squeeze in the first hit of our final auto attack and then cancel into our hold version E skill, but I tried that and it's either just super tight or impossible. Even if it is super tight, then I don't think it's worth it because it's just going to take too much practice, and in the heat of the moment you're probably going to mistime it. Now, starting with 1 stack, so this means you do the press version of her E skill, you immediately cancel into her burst, and then you're going to have 2 stacks of Grimheart right off the bat. Starting your combo this way was the only way I was able to get 13 stacks. If you start this combo with her hold E, the best that you can do is 12 stacks, and it's a very specific combo. Start with the hold E skill into 3 normal attacks, dash cancel into 4 normal attacks. Otherwise, mostly you'll be getting 11, just like the first set of combos. I've seen other content creators recommend only 1 combo to hit 13 stacks, but there's actually 2 different combos that you can do to hit those 13 stacks. So although those content creators aren't wrong, they are certainly incomplete in sharing with everyone how to get the most stacks. And so I'll first start with the combo that I've seen every other content creator recommends, and that is the press E skill into burst into 4 normal attacks, into the hold version of her E skill, into 4 more normal attacks. You can very similarly hit 13 stacks if you go for 3 normal attacks, into the hold version of her E skill, into spam normal attacks until the Lightfall Sword hits. So go ahead and pick your variation and you'll definitely be able to hit 13 stacks. And then the last combo I want to give a quick shout out to is if you start your elemental burst combo with 2 normal attacks, into the hold version of her E skill, into 5 normal attacks. This one is not going to give you 13 stacks, but it does give you 12, which is not bad, but still I thought it was worth mentioning. And to convince you guys that I'm not actually just talking out of my ass, I'll show you guys how I figured out how many stacks I was hitting. And it's a pretty simple way. All I had to do was plug the information of my Eula into my spreadsheet calculator, and then trial and error to figure out how many stacks I was getting. And this is the chart of damage numbers I was using to cross-reference the number of stacks that I was hitting in game. These numbers are against a level 85 Ruin Guard when Eula is at level 70. So there is going to be some slight variation because the Ruin Guards that I'm fighting are not all level 85. They range from 85 to 87. But since the damage gap between stacks is so large, it's pretty easy to infer how many stacks we're actually hitting. Also to note why the numbers aren't exactly matching up in game, that's because of rounding errors. When I round some of the numbers to only 3 decimal places versus 4, the amount of damage begins to vary a little bit. So I am not an actual developer at MiHoYo, so I don't know how far they round their numbers. Alright guys, that's all that I have for you in this video. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video helped you out, and until next time, I will see you guys later.